as hiring events. Of the hiring events to date, since the Employment Collaborative has been working with job seekers and with these agencies and employers, we have assisted in the hiring of over 1,000 job seekers with disabilities in Cuyahoga County. The Employment Collaborative in Cuyahoga County is one of several employment collaboratives, but the activities that we do here are focused on Cuyahoga County job seekers. Today, our presenters will be Wendy Zorman and Alicia Howerton from the Cleveland Sight Center. A little bit of background about the Cleveland Sight Center. It was originally called the Cleveland Society for the Blind when it was established in 1908. Cleveland Sight Center now provides rehabilitation, social, and independent living services to individuals in Northeast Ohio who are blind or visually impaired. Vocational Rehabilitation Department at Cleveland Sight Center provides career development and employment services to job seekers with any kind of disability, not just those who are visually impaired. The Cleveland Sight Center also offers on-site a customer service training for individuals who are maybe looking to work in a call center, and that work that they do once they are finished with their training would include both on-site work as well as work from home. The Cleveland Sight Center operates a call center as well, and it partners with many state and local government agencies to help improve the front door experience that their customers are experiencing when they are calling in for assistance. Like I said, today our presenters are Alicia Howerton and Wendy Zorman, both from the Cleveland Sight Center, and I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to tell us more about those speakers.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all are enjoying your lunch while you watch this presentation to keep with the theme of the Lunch and Learn. My name is Melissa Elias. I am an Area Coordinator Workforce Development with the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, which we help facilitate the Employment Collaborative of Cuyahoga County. We are a team of 6 spread out across Cuyahoga County. Many of them are on this call. So definitely in the chat, if you want to send any questions to us, feel free to do so. But we are going to focus on our great presentation today with Alicia and Wendy. I am going to go through their bios right now, and we will start with Alicia Howerton. She is the Strategic Partnerships Manager from the Cleveland Sight Center. Alicia serves as Cleveland Sight Center's Strategic Partnerships Manager and is a Cleveland native who has been visually impaired for over 40 years. She first became involved with Cleveland Sight Center as a client, receiving training in orientation and mobility with a white cane, daily living tasks, and eventually computer skills so that she could re-enter the workforce after caring for her children. She developed excellent computer skills and was later hired by Cleveland Sight Center to teach others how to adjust to vision loss tactically and strategically. Alicia is a remarkable advocate for those with vision loss and acts as Cleveland Sight Center's primary spokesperson to schools, universities, community groups, and elected officials. And our next presenter will be Wendy Zorman. Wendy is a physical therapist and is an employment specialist with the Cleveland Sight Center. Wendy earned a BS in Allied Health with a physical therapy major from The Ohio State University. She earned a doctorate in physical therapy from Utica College. Wendy Zorman worked with people with a wide variety of disabilities during her 33 years as a physical therapist with the Cleveland Clinic. She worked in inpatient rehabilitation with clients ranging from young adults to very senior citizens. She retired from physical therapy in 2021 and began a less physically demanding career as a job coach for the Cleveland Sight Center. She was eager to apply her background knowledge to making work more accessible and possible for her clients. She loves her work. She was promoted to employment specialist about 1 year ago, working with clients with and without visual disabilities, largely with the Ticket to Work program. Wendy Zorman lives in Euclid with her husband. They have one daughter, grown and flown, and another who is studying at the Ohio State in her 3rd year. She loves to craft, make scrapbooks, and decorate her cubicle. So I'm going to hand it over to our presenters from the Cleveland Site Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So what I named the presentation was People with Visual Impairments Going to Work. Next slide. The Cleveland Site Center's mission statement is to provide individualized support and tools to navigate the visual world.
And their vision statement is one of my favorite sayings: to have a world where the quality of one's sight does not determine the quality of one's life. Next slide.
So the Cleveland Site Center has served the needs of Northeast Ohio residents who are blind or have low vision for over a century. The CSC offers developmental, rehabilitation, and vocational services to ensure success in today's society. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. The who, what, how, where, and why of the Cleveland Site Center.
So the Cleveland Site Center serves people of all ages, from birth through the golden years. We serve many counties ranging from Ashtabula, Cuyahoga, Cuyahoga, Lake, Lorraine, Medina, Portage, Stark, and Summit counties. It is a fluid flow of service area. Our lights just dimmed. For children, for early intervention, we've served up to 20 counties in the state. We have vocational rehabilitation, occupational therapists, which specialize in low vision, opticians, low vision optometrists in our clinic. We have vision rehabilitation therapists, orientation and mobility instructors, assistive technology. There is so much, anything you could imagine that somebody might need, including leisure and lifestyles, recreational activities, socialization. We have it here at Cleveland Site Center to help somebody be as successful as possible and as independent as they possibly can.
The programs that we provide could be happening in our office. It could be happening at the client's home, the client's job, in the community, and then thanks to the pandemic, virtually. We can also offer services, and we're really just trying to help individuals find solutions to help them do what they want to do in life. Next slide. So talking together.
Yes.
So talking with someone who has a visual impairment or is blind.
Yes.
Some tips.
Yeah. So just a few tips, like when you're walking down the hallway and you see a coworker who's blind or visually impaired, don't just wave at them. Say, "Hi, Wendy, it's Alicia." You know, you can still wave, and you could even say, "I'm waving at you." So be very specific so that they know where you are in their space. Being more specific, so don't use vague words like over here and over there. You use the clock method. I know when this was written, a portion of it was written for another PowerPoint, and I know it says the clock method will show that in another slide. So I'll just, the clock method is the analog clock, the circle clock that's at the 12 at the top, 6 at the bottom, 3 to the right, 9 to the left. Using that, knowing that the person who's blind or visually impaired is always at 6 o'clock. So currently from where I'm sitting, Wendy is at my 5 o'clock. So if somebody were sitting across from me, they would be at my 12 o'clock. So just using that just to help guide somebody, whether you're, you know, walking outside together or you are sitting in a meeting room with people. You know, if Wendy decides she's going to roll her eyes at me because I've done something silly once again, she might tell me, "Alicia, I'm just rolling my eyes at you and I'm just shaking my head."
Never happened.
But so just be very specific.
And say your name each time you speak, especially if you're talking in a group. You're like, saying, this is Wendy. I have an opinion about XYZ. So, like
It's-
that.
Yeah, especially if you're in a group setting or a meeting. Knowing who's speaking, you just don't automatically know because you've heard somebody's voice, a few times, or if it's out of context even. Say you don't normally have a meeting with these people, so you're not going to necessarily know who they are. So Nancy might say, Nancy speaking, I'd like to ask Wendy a question.
Right. The other thing that I had to learn, it took me a while, working here, is if you come into the cafeteria or like dining area, break area, saying, hi, it's Wendy, I'm here and I'm going to use the microwave, but then also saying, Wendy's leaving when you leave, so that person is not talking to nobody when you've walked away and they didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So it's another courtesy.
It does happen. People have walked away, especially if there's more than one person in the room and, there's ambient noise. You just don't know what's going on. So yeah, it is very helpful.
Next slide. So communication when we're providing assistance to someone with a visual impairment. Do you want to take that?
Oh, sure. So I know we're going to be showing a slide that shows
The video.
a video that shows how to do human guide, that's guiding somebody, whether you're walking down a hallway together, you're guiding them to an office room, to a chair, through a doorway, up or down stairs.
Okay, you definitely don't want to assume that that person needs help.
Yes. So always ask somebody, just like if, you're 2 or 3 people and you're interacting and you both all have vision, you would still ask somebody if they wanted some assistance. So just don't assume just because they're blind or visually impaired that they need assistance.
And just saying, what do you need me to do? How would you like me to help you? Like hold this chair still or do this. When you're walking with them, a person who has low vision or is blind, and you're giving sighted guide leading, you would describe the surroundings like, oh, we're in a beautiful grove of trees, or there's a potential trip hazard. There's some tree roots ahead of you, and about 3 paces, you're going to need to step over. Changes in the furniture placement, if it was applicable, like the sofa that's usually not over here is now in the middle of the area or whatever, to let them know. We mentioned the clock method. You can also audio describe what's happening when hearing loud noises or some type of commotion in the surrounding areas, as well as things that might be of interest to them, like there's a baby in a stroller coming the other way or something like that.
And the loud noises, especially if, maybe there's construction going on and you as a sighted person can see all the things that they're doing, or, moving equipment, and it can be very startling if you can't see those types of things.
Also, if you were giving somebody something or setting something down in front of them or near them, announce what you're going to do before you do it. Like, Alicia, I'm handing you the mouse, or whatever.
Or even if you're just introducing yourself, in today's society, sometimes we bump elbows, but you used to be able to shake hands. So you would say, hi, it's Alicia. I'm holding my hand out to shake yours, because if you held your hand out to me, I might not necessarily know you're doing that because I can't see that. So you want to just showcase any gestures, audibly describe any gestures that you would be doing that might not be seen.
And if you're in the home or workspace of a person who is blind or visually impaired, don't move anything without asking. Let them know where you moved it to, and then move it back and announce that you've moved it back. Next slide. Right now, we have our human guide video featuring Alicia and also Broadus Hayes, who's the manager of employment services.
All right. So
this is a guide on how to provide human guide.
yeah, Wendy and I were going to do this, but we figured it would be better if you just saw the link And
Video.
somebody is doing the voiceover part of it. Because it would be kind of awkward for us to be walking around the room.
It started. I don't hear anything.
Mary should be talking.
And there should be a voice. Yeah, it should be talking. I don't know if we can fix that for the volume of the video to be enhanced or.
Yeah, there should be a woman's
Voiceover.
voice.
Guys, sorry. What, I'm hearing a lot of talking. What do we need?
The video's audio is not playing.
Okay, it's playing on my end.
Oh,
Hmm.
we
Um,
Those
don't
that are in the
hear.
presentation, can you hear the audio on the video? Just somebody make a comment in the chat, please.
No, Melissa, you can't hear the audio. Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah,
Okay, when you share screen, I think there's a button that said it's also, you have to click that says share audio as well. So maybe unshare your screen, and then when you reshare it, I think there's an audio button to select.
okay. Okay, sorry, guys.
You'll do share screen. It's like in the bottom corner. Did you see some like audio? Okay.
Grip they should have to be comfortable
There
in
you go.
Everybody got it now?
Oh, that's
Yep.
Mary's
Yeah,
voice.
can I go
There
back?
you go.
Yeah,
You
that
can
was
hear
Okay,
it.
Mary.
let's go back. Sorry about that, everybody.
It's all right.
All right.
And we're back.
Welcome to Cleveland Sight Center's video about how to provide the human guide technique. A human guide is a person who provides travel assistance to someone who is blind or low vision by helping them move safely from one place to another. This video will provide an overview of a variety of techniques used when practicing human guide. The first thing you should always remember is to ask the person if they would like help with human guide. Never assume that someone wants your help. If they say yes, you will initiate contact with them by tapping the back of their hand. Make sure you audibly say, "I'm going to tap the back of your hand now so you can grip my arm." This will help orient them to where you are in their space. The person will then be able to find your arm and hold it slightly above your elbow. This is the proper grip they should have to be comfortable and safe while following your lead. Next, it is important to make sure the person receiving human guide is positioned correctly. The person who is blind or low vision should position themselves at the guide's side about 1/2 step behind them. It is important for them to tuck their elbow while holding the guide's arm so that they can stay close to the guide. Once you are in that position, you are ready to walk and guide safely. There are a few scenarios where you will have to adjust positioning, and we will review those now. When the guide and the person who is blind or low vision approach a narrow passage, like in a small hallway or between a row of chairs, they will have to adjust positioning. The guide should audibly let the other person know that they are approaching a narrow passage. At the same time, the guide should move their guide arm behind and towards the small of their back. The person who is blind or low vision should respond by extending their arm and stepping in directly behind the guide. Their arm should be extended to avoid stepping on the heels of the guide. When the narrow passage has been crossed, the guide returns their guide arm to a normal position. When someone wants to sit down in a chair, here is how you can help as a guide. You can walk them to a chair and allow your guide hand to direct their hand to the back of the chair. Once their hand is on the back of the chair, they will be able to feel the rest of the chair and identify where to sit. When passing through doors, the guide should audibly announce that they are approaching doors. The guide should let the person know how the door opens as they approach the door. The guide should give 2 pieces of information. First, whether the door opens toward them or away from them. Second, which side the hinges are on. The person who is blind or low vision should always be on the side where the hinges are. This way, they can support the door as they go through the doorway. As they approach the door, the guide should move their arm behind their back, and the other person will respond by extending their arm and stepping in toward the small of the guide's back. The guide grabs the door handle and opens the door. Then, the person who is blind or low vision uses their free hand to support the door as they travel through the doorway. When approaching stairs, the guide should audibly announce that they are approaching them. The person who is blind or low vision should always position themselves between the guide and the handrail so that they can hold on to the handrail as well as the guide's arm. The guide should stop next to the edge of the first step so that their toes are right next to the edge, and allow the other person enough time to find the handrail and position themselves next to the edge of the first step. When ready, the guide takes the first step up or down. When the guide takes the second step, the other person takes their first step, so they will always stay one step apart. To traverse single curbs or drop-offs, first the guide should always approach and pause at the curb square. Next, the guide goes up or down the curb and pauses again as the person who is blind or low vision squares up to the curb. Then, after they step down or up the curb, the guide pauses for 3 seconds and resumes travel. Once you have practiced a few times navigating narrow passages, chairs, doors, stairs, and curbs, it will get easier. Always remember that the most important thing is making sure that the person you are guiding is comfortable. We hope this video was helpful and can be used as a resource for you as you provide human guide in the future. Thank you. Questions? Contact Cleveland Sight Center at 216-791-8118 or info@clevelandsightcenter.org.
Next slide. Hopefully that was helpful for all of you. A word about service animals. This might be something that we're preaching to the choir, but when a blind or visually impaired person has a guide dog, remember that that guide dog is working. If the dog has the harness on, it means definitely that they're working, and you want to not distract, talk to, feed, touch, even make eye contact with the dog because they need to be focused. But if the dog is off harness and they're just in what I call regular dog mode, you should still ask the handler if it's okay to interact with the dog.
Yeah, and it's
Next slide.
really important to do that because the guide dog is only as good as the commands that they are given. You got to remember, they are just a dog. Even though they're a working dog, they are still just a dog.
Okay, so let's start to talk about the intersection of work and visual impairments. Some statistics that I found in 2016, 2017, that was the latest I could get. The unemployment rate for persons who are blind or low vision was 12%. And this is more than double the general unemployment rate that year, which was 5%. That was according to a study at Mississippi State. But some studies estimate as high as 70% unemployment, but we believe that they're considering all people with a visual impairment, whether they're actively in the workforce or not. So that 12% is of the people that are blind and visually impaired that want to work. The unemployment rate is as high as 12%. So why should we hire people with disabilities? It's been shown through studies that there are better attendance, safer, that they're more focused on safety and proper procedures, so they tend to have less accidents than a non-disabled worker, that they are more prompt. They have the same rates of using sick days. They represent the real world in your work environment. If there aren't people with disabilities, then there's just not that representation of the full experience of humanity. They also may have a much better empathy for others who patronize the business or the service who happen to be disabled as well. Next slide. To prepare the client, there are many activities that you would use to prepare a sighted client for work that work for blind and low vision clients as well. We're going to help them develop a resume, help them with interviewing skills, practice interviewing, preparation for transportation to make sure they can get to the job. And a lot tends to fall into the category of the soft skills, like interacting with the manager or the boss, interacting with colleagues, interacting with the clients they might be serving or customers that they might be serving, working on those soft skills. One thing to consider is that the application process itself may not be that accessible in today's day and age. How we tend to work around it, if it could be that it's not accessible because your client doesn't have a lot of good computer skills or no access to a computer, and they're trying to do everything that's digital on a phone, which can be very small and very difficult to access even with accommodations for your phone to make it accessible to you. So one of the things that we do here to work around it is to set up an email account with Gmail, perhaps, that's just a generic work account that that person knows is for things related to trying to get a job, for emails related to trying to get a job, and for that both the client and the employment specialist are able to access so that it can be monitored by both people and interacted with on behalf of each other. There may be accessibility issues with the application process in the forms of automated tests, especially some of the job boards want you to do a quiz, or if it's a job where you're managing money, they want you to do a math test, and that may not be accessible, but also forms on paper may not be accessible. So you have to do a lot of meeting with the client, either on the phone or in person, to try to assist them to get those tests done. There could be inaccessible onboarding. We've run into that where, again, it's either the type of format that they're using for the onboarding isn't accessible with screen readers or with the technology that the client has. And so there might be issues also in the ongoing training that happens at that job. So they may need accommodations in order to just even feel included. You know, like if they always sent around a printed newsletter that wasn't in Braille, all the people that, you know, can read the paper newsletter are going to have the information, but a blind or low vision client would not. So you have to think about those things and work on including that in their accommodations. Next slide. Our roles that we have as an employment specialist are to help the client to decide when they're going to reveal their disability or not reveal it at all, or just to help them, excuse me, I got a spasm in my back, to help them make a decision as to, do they want to put it out there pretty early on? Do they want to wait till the interview? Do they want to wait until work starts and they need to request the accommodations? And it is a discussion you need to have. Keeping in mind that it may be obvious in a live interview, if your client walks in using a white cane, it's going to be given away already that that is their disability. A lot of times that can turn into a no answer for employment and for interviews. So sometimes it's best to have the person have like a virtual interview if possible, just so it takes away some of that bias that might be against them. We don't advise that our clients put their visual impairment on the resume. It's not required. It's really nobody's business. So we don't put that on a resume. We would guide the client in some special circumstances if they're going to be having a guide dog and working at a place. You need to find out, you know, is the environment safe for an animal? Is there a place for the dog to do its business? You know, things like that, just planning ahead. You want to guide the client toward their necessary skills training that they need, especially computer skills. And I can't see the right side of my slide, but I think, especially computer skills that will need accommodation. That's what it says. The things that will need accommodation, you want to make sure that you are addressing that with your client, that they might not be fully ready to seek work until they have those computer skills, if it's likely that those are part of the job. Next slide. Another thing about our role and preparing the client is that blind or low vision job seekers have likely been out of the workforce for many years, and it can be decades, for sure. It can be decades. Our most important role, though, is to boost the client's confidence. We want to highlight what they can do, not what they can't do. They tend to be focused on what they can't do a lot of times, which would be natural. And you want to convince them that being hired is not because someone feels sorry for them or thinks that they should help the disabled by giving them a job. It's because of their competence and their skills. Next slide. We want to remind them that they're being hired because they're competent, they have something to contribute, and they deserve a job as much as anyone else. You want to prepare the client for what they will say about their absence from the workforce, because on a resume, you know, they can see a big gap. the employer can see a big gap. And so I've had clients prepare a statement. Some of them have put it on the resume. My absence from the workforce was due to taking care of family or elderly relatives, or my absence from the workforce occurred because of an injury that I needed to really rehabilitate from, just to kind of say why they weren't in the job. Prepare the client to reinforce their own skills. We have to teach them how to brag about themselves. I heard a quote where I am worth more to you, the employer, than the amount you may have to spend on accommodations. I don't recommend somebody say exactly that, but keeping in mind with that thought that, you have more value to the company than even it costs to make things accessible to you. So Alicia is going to share her employment story.
Yeah, so Wendy talked about confidence, and as an employment specialist, helping to encourage that confidence. I started losing my vision as a teenager, and I had odd jobs back then. And then as a young adult, I even worked as a clerk in a store, and as a cashier, and I'm kind of old. So way back then we had to look in a book at these little teeny tiny numbers to make sure that a credit card number wasn't in there. Otherwise it was a bad card. And so that job in particular, I instead of letting somebody know that, it was more difficult for me to do that, I might have, could have benefited from magnification or something, I just quit. I was too ashamed to let somebody know that I was losing my vision. I hadn't gotten to the point of acceptance, accepting my vision loss. I lived in a world losing my vision, trying to live as a sighted person. And I have a progressive eye disease, so it slowly became worse and worse, my vision did. And I continued in that pattern for some time. And, as a young mother and wife, my family, they helped encourage that by telling me, that the kids would lead me wherever we went for a walk. They would tell me, step up here, step down, there's stairs coming, those types of things. And, I didn't know about Cleveland Sight Center for the first 20 years of my vision loss, even though I lived less than 20 miles away. So I never had any assistance in learning assistive technology or even used a cane up until then. And once I was introduced to the Sight Center, I did learn orientation and mobility and how to use a cane, but I still really didn't know anybody else who was blind or visually impaired and wasn't confident enough in using the cane publicly. When I did, I felt like an alien. And I don't know if that was truly how people perceived me or not. Maybe they didn't, but that was my perception. And so I wouldn't use my cane. And I stopped working in the workforce and stayed at home, took care of not only my children, but other children for years, because it was something that I could do. It was easier to do. And it wasn't until 2008 when my daughter and granddaughter moved away and I stopped babysitting, and I would, every day when the school bus would go by, the dog and I would cry, not a guide dog, just a family dog. And so I decided then that I have to do something. And so I contacted the Sight Center again, and they introduced me to what was called BSVI back then. Now it's called OOD, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. But back then it was Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired. And I wish I would have had a person like our Wendy, because she's a great encourager, because, our whole employment department, they are the I can kind of people. And my person I had wasn't so encouraging. I didn't know what I could do. I just saw all the can'ts. I can't do this. I can't do that because I can't see. So how am I going to do it? But anyhow, I pushed through and came to the site center, learned customer service training skills after learning how to touch type. And how to use a software program called JAWS. I had never used a computer before, and that's how I had to learn how to access a computer. And JAWS stands for Job Access with Speech. It talks to you, it tells you everything that a sighted person sees on a screen, you hear in your ears. And it's all done with keystrokes. You don't even use that mouse Wendy keeps wanting to give to me.
I feel like such an idiot. The other day I was like, here, and she's like, do you think I can use it? I'm like, oops.
So it's all done with keystrokes. But so I did learn all of those types of things just so I could volunteer at my local hospital. And red tape takes forever in hospitals. I even had 2 TB tests and everything. But an opportunity came open here at the site center in our store part-time. And I thought, well, I'll apply, but I still wasn't super confident, but I was gaining confidence. And it wasn't just because I was around other people who were blind or visually impaired and they were going through some trainings, or they were here at the site center for other activities, learning Braille and daily living skills. It was because I was with other people, not Wendy, but people like Wendy who are sighted and who saw me as a person, not just a person with vision loss. So it was not just being accepted by my visually impaired peers, but being accepted as a person by my sighted peers as well. And now, you know, I was hired 13 years ago, working part-time in a store, and yeah, it's 13 years later, and I still lack that super tech chip, but I can still do. And I believe I bring a lot to the table now where, you know, 13, 14 years ago, I would not have said that. And yeah, I thank people like Wendy and the Cleveland Sight Center for helping to encourage me to continue, because I do love what I do and want to share that with anybody that wants to learn, educate the public on knowing that people who are blind and visually impaired are just like they are. They just do things a little differently. So.
Agree.
Don't let that cane scare you. People are that, I'm telling you, that cane, it's, I don't know, got big muscles or something, because it scares people.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times, it's my spasm again. People are just uncomfortable with what they don't know and understand. So
Yeah,
you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So one thing I'd like to point out about Alicia's employment story is that it went in pieces and gradual steps, which we're all familiar with.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times our clients who are blind or visually impaired are trying to picture the whole big picture and everything all at once, instead of, you know, let's start with part-time at a store, you know, help them build it in pieces. Next slide, please. So speaking of, what's my name?
I'm so sorry you're in pain.
No, I know, it's okay. She's sorry I'm in pain. Okay, so speaking of computer skills, the Job Access with Speech, JAWS, you definitely need to be trained on how to use it. It's kind of complicated, but once you get the hang of it, people are pretty good at it. She's amazing when she uses it.
Being younger helps.
Yeah. And also there is a fee, like a subscription that you need for it. Screen readers, many are available. Some are free, some are subscription only. There's NVDA, which I admit I don't know a lot about, but it's non-visual desktop access, or a way for you to navigate a desktop. Apple products and Android products each have their own voiceover where they can read to you. It's kind of a screen reader for your phone. Apple has voiceover, and TalkBack Android has TalkBack. The Cleveland Site Center has technology trainers, at least 2 of whom are visually impaired. And they're great people to teach you what you're going to need to use to navigate the visual world. Next slide. So where can clients who are blind or low vision work? Just about anywhere. I listed probably a ridiculous amount of examples to consider, but things such like marketing, teaching, counseling, coaching, motivational speaking, retail employee, artist, architect, engineer, scientist, working for an answering service, technology teacher for the blind, researcher, a packer or an assembler, a singer, a grocery bagger, a banker, social work, massotherapist, freelance writer, bank teller, DJ. You know, there's so many different facets. It's, you know, the number of things you could not, absolutely not do is much shorter than the list of things that you could possibly get into and do.
And it is amazing. I recently was aware of a doctor after doing a presentation. That was one of the questions that they had. This very highly educated, very caring person just could not fathom, well, what could somebody who's blind or visually impaired do for work? You know, they were just kind of dumbfounded.
Yeah, not thinking very hard.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk to that person. Next slide. So computer skills, just as a separate entity, the in-person and remote jobs are going to be more easily possible if the blind or low vision client has either JAWS training or some other type of computer training and know how to have an accommodation for their vision impairment with regards to the computer. Because if you think about it, how many jobs can you think of that don't interact with a computer in some way? I've thought about it a lot, and there's not many where you don't have to interact with a computer. Even someone being a dishwasher at a restaurant, sometimes the machine is computerized, you know, so you need to have some comfort with technology. There is JAWS training here at the Cleveland Site Center. The way to access that, if you have a client who needs JAWS training, the client should ask their case manager that they have at the Site Center, provided they're active with the Site Center, to assist the client in enrolling for JAWS training. Registration might be needed if they've had their services from CSC a long time ago, but haven't had them recently. They might need to re-register to get actively back in the roster again. And OOD is a great resource for funding the JAWS training. And sometimes there are other options, but it's mainly OOD. Next slide. You want to consider in job searching to sometimes just use a direct call to an employer where your client wants to work. Like there's this corner 7-Eleven or there's a corner market, you know, I would love to work there. So even if you're not seeing openings posted or a help wanted sign, sometimes just approaching and working on maybe carving out a job like, hey, could you use someone to sweep up, to vacuum, you know, the barber chairs or whatever it is, and carve out a little piece of a job? Would you be willing to hire someone to do these, you know, 5 specific tasks? And sometimes that's a way you can get somebody's foot in the door. You also could discover who's hiring by looking at a job board like Indeed or that one that you need, Indeed. What's the other one where it's ZipRecruiter? Yeah, so you're looking on ZipRecruiter, you're looking on Indeed, Glassdoor, any of those job sites, and you see it on a job board, a job, but go to the employer's website directly and look for, under the careers section of that job board, a lead for a job, and see if you can approach that way, and tell your clients to do the same. And you want to take full advantage of in-person job fairs where the client can shine right from the start. That was so hit home to me when we had when ECCC had that job fair. It was just amazing to me how many people, like, the first impression is like so impactful. And even if they came with the cane, a white cane or a guide person leading them, it just makes a statement about how eager and dedicated they were to finding a job, that they would come somewhere and, you know, go out of their way to try to get the job. I just thought that it was just a really good, there was no opportunity for an employer to say like, oh, I don't think so, you know, and not that they'd say, I see your white cane, I don't want to hire you, but they better not say that, but
Written
but
on their
yeah, but it can be written on their face, right? And so like that whole bias is taken away. So taking advantage of in-person job fairs is a big one. Next slide. So now we'll move on to some employer incentives. There is the DAC, or the Disabled Access Credit. It's for small businesses with, I think, 30 or less employees, to provide money to help them provide access to persons with disabilities in their business or job. This is a renewable credit that they can get every year that they incur expenses that help eliminate barriers for disabilities. And it's IRS form 8826, if you wanted information about that, what kinds of things qualify. There's also a barrier removal tax deduction, and it can be used at the same time as a DAC. You can deduct up to $15,000 a year for expenses that have removed architectural or transportation barriers to mobility for the disabled and for the elderly as well. Then there's the work opportunity tax credit. There's between $1,200 and $9,600 of credit, tax credit, for those who hire from specific groups that are outlined by the program, who are traditionally people that have faced barriers to employment. I think it covers a wide range of barriers. Next slide. So what kinds of things are you going to help your client think about as far as accommodations go? Most have just like no idea what's out there. So you need to work together with them. And that's where the Site Center could help in helping to point out what accommodations could be helpful. So access to JAWS would be an accommodation if computer use is needed. Navigation aids, such as a white cane. Magnifiers could be an accommodation. Scanners that read written materials for you. Screen readers that read a screen either on a phone or a computer. Bump dots, which are a really simple little tactile thing. I can't lift up the keyboard, but there's a little dot. It's just a little tactile dot, like a sticker that you put down that helps people get oriented to maybe the number 5 on your phone or 5 on the keypad, because then the other numbers, you know, are all around the 5, something like that, or which button turns the microwave on, you know, and put one on there. It could be something that simple, that easy, that helps somebody do their job. There's IRA, which I tried to look up what IRA stood for, and it's artificial intelligence, but the RA isn't what the other rest of the word is. So it's artificial intelligence, like interpretation of the visual world. So there's an IRA program where you can use, I had a client who used it at Amazon, where they were wearing an iPhone with the camera facing out. You get hooked up with an agent who's on the phone who can see what your camera is seeing and can then tell you things like your computer's broken, your cash register's out of tape, you know, whatever kind of thing, help you navigate around, help you cross the street. But they can definitely be helpful and work. They could read, you know, a page to you. That is a subscription as well that goes by how many hours you buy. Also, a flexible schedule. Another Amazon example is that it's such a huge workplace, the Amazon warehouse where I've helped clients, that the person using a cane, white cane, to navigate to the lunchroom or to the door or to the time clock, there was such a huge volume of people walking at the same time that we came up with an accommodation of a staggered break, staggered lunch, staggered entry, so that the crowds would be drastically reduced for him to make his way to and from his workstation. So
yeah,
that was pretty good.
Not only with time for that, but possibly staggering, you being more flexible with when you arrive and when you leave due to the barrier for transportation. If you arrive paratransit, there's that lovely half-hour window they have, and they may pick you up at the top of the window and drop you off first thing, and you get to work way early. Maybe your start time isn't until 7 a.m., but you get there at 25 after, like I did today. And, or you've got 5 people on the bus, they don't come till the end of your window or even outside of your window, and you don't get dropped off till a half hour after you're supposed to start. And a lot of places, if you have to clock in, you could get docked for that. So that could be an accommodation as well.
Yeah, that they do
Flex
that.
time,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. I've had some issues with staggered schedules because there have been places where the employer says, well, I don't do that for everybody else. And I was like, well, everybody else doesn't need that. This is just making the job accessible. So sometimes you have to work with the employer to understand accommodations in a pleasant way. Next slide. So more types of accommodation would be human guide. One of my Amazon workers used human guide for going to the restroom. They had somebody that they could signal, and that person would human guide them to the restroom. Then they discontinued the human guide and said it was no longer going to be possible. So my client who already worked there, we had to install tape that had a raised bump in it for the whole path from the workstation to the break room/restroom, so that he could feel it with his cane to know where to go, how to navigate in that environment. So that was an interesting struggle, challenge for us to switch from human guide to you got to find it yourself with your cane. It was really interesting.
Especially in a huge open area,
And things are moving and
Yeah.
carts are going back and forth. It can be very challenging. The location of your workstation could be an accommodation so that you could be either where it's noisier, where it's quieter, where it's brighter, where it's darker, where it's closer to something you need. So that is a level of accommodation. Auditory versions of a written document, if they're sending out meeting minutes, that there's an auditory version of it, or that they can get it in their email and have their screen reader read it to them. Braille formatted documents, a document that displays as a formatted web page that has picture descriptors. So if it has a picture in it, it would say, photo of girls picking flowers in the garden, like to let you know that there was a picture and that's what it was. Tactographic documents are something that are like more up and coming, but like bar graphs or whatever, where it's raised so you can feel the difference. And initial orientation and mobility training when a person first starts a job, and maybe even transportation training, because you want to bet at Amazon, my clients needed orientation and mobility training just to know how to get to their workstation, but just to navigate around. And our orientation and mobility specialist was able to say, this area and this area should just be off limits to that person because there is no safe way to navigate. So they can consult and let you know, so that the client can be safe. Next slide. The client is encouraged by us to practice how they want to word their request for accommodations, to state it in the positive, to not say, I'm sorry, but I need, to say that, in order for me to perform my job like my coworkers, I will need such and such. You want to educate the client that an accommodation can be requested at any time, not just the start of the job. It could be a year and a half later that you find you need an accommodation. And you want to brainstorm what kind of accommodations with your client when they get the job by kind of reviewing each job task, or I kind of take them begin of shift to end of shift, thinking through the different things they may have to do to try to figure out where an accommodation might be needed. Next slide. And finally, we have, if you get the online version or the email version of this, you'll be able to access these links. They're online resources for visual impairments and employment. And they're kind of some of the places I used for formulating our talk. So I tried to give you a description about what you're going to get when you do these different websites, but it tells you about employment, and some of them talk about nationwide opportunities for employment, which I think we often think too small and don't think of like, hey, would our client want to relocate to do this job for the state? You know, sometimes we tend to like put that out of our minds instead of thinking about offering it. So make the world bigger.
I mean, even here, Nancy on the onset talked about our call center a little bit. Our call center has grown. We not only have, you know, I think 9 contracts with different state agencies like Ohio Board of Nursing, Ohio Department of Taxation, et cetera. We also have 2 contracts with for-profit agencies, and we employ people from 12 different states because of COVID and everybody learning how to work from home. So they didn't necessarily have to relocate, the people in Florida or Georgia or North Carolina, but they do work for the Cleveland Site Center from the comfort of their home.
So that's about it, except for any questions that we might be able to answer for you if you have any.
Yeah. And I know your questions have to go in the chat. So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. And no question is too silly or personal. We will try to answer it for you.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody does have any questions, just go ahead and throw it up in the chat. I know some of you have to take off. I see people dropping off, but thank you to Wendy and Alicia. I know this was a very educating presentation for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people that are on the call / lunch and learn today. I know a lot of it can really kind of cross over into other, you know, people with disabilities, you know, with the accommodations and how to talk and talking to the clients. And so thank you so much. And Alicia, thank you for giving your personal story as well. Give you a round of applause for, you know, everything that you have overcome and such, and that you just continue to move forward with. Looks like Jared Daly has raised his hand. Go for it, Jared.
That was an accident. I was going to try to clap and yeah, I was looking for like the clap emoji. That was an accident.
Yeah, so again, it doesn't seem to look like there's any questions within the chat, but everybody that is on the call, you will get a PDF of the presentation. You also get a copy of the video as well. And looks like, so we do have a Q&A here.
And if anybody has a question at any other time, you know, they can feel free to reach out to either of us. We're the only Wendy and Alicia at the site center.
Right.
So they can call the main line.
We actually do have a question from Elizabeth Gillis. I don't know why the chat's not working, but she says she does have a question. Let's see if you can do it. Elizabeth, can you type into there or talk? Oh my goodness. I'm really showing my age with this technology barriers. But
Yeah.
anyways, Elizabeth, if you do want to reach out to Wendy and Alicia, we will have their contact information.
I was going to say,
Right here.
we can send the our emails or phone numbers.
They're right there. She's just posted them on the screen, kind of like a mini business card, like your signature. She just put it up there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
They can have that. Yeah, feel free to email,
reach out.
answer, or email a question. So she can't like unmute herself and be able to talk her question.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Really.
Sorry to put you.
I really came to the game prepared. It's like me going to golf when I'm showing up with a tennis racket. But anyways, we're back. Okay, she says, in the past, I had a coworker who was blind. I know different people have varying amounts of vision, and I never knew the best way to gauge what she could or couldn't see.
Okay.
So what's a polite way to do that? Do you think? Is that what Elizabeth?
Well, I know people are afraid to ask, but always just ask. And if the person says, well, I don't know how to explain it, or they don't want to, they may just say it's none of your business. But, you know, I've always taken it as an educational moment. So when people ask me that question, I have learned to say, well, it's sort of like looking through sheets of wax paper with spots marked out, and the spots that are marked out are total blind spots. So for me personally, holding my hand 6 inches from my face, I know it's my whole hand, but I can't see my whole hand. So, you know, because it is different. I mean, legal blindness, you know, the definition is 20/200 in the better eye with the best correction possible, or the loss of your visual field down to 20%. So what the average person can see at 20 feet away, that's like looking 200 feet away for the person who's blind or visually impaired. So, but just ask. But you may be told, no, I don't want to share that with you. That's all.
I've said to clients who I was starting to work with, I wondered if my client that I worked, one of the two that I worked with at Amazon, if he had ever had vision in his life. So I just said, so-and-so, do you mind if I ask you about your vision? Do you mind talking about your vision? And he said, no, not at all. And I said, have you ever had vision? And he said, no, I haven't. What was the hard part was what to say after he said, no, I haven't ever seen, because, you know, it's like you don't want to engage in like a pity response. You know, I just said, oh, okay, I didn't realize that must have been difficult, you know, and said that rather than, oh no, you know, like you don't want to, you know, but the mom in me says that, you know, but the other part of me was like, wow, you know, that must have been a big challenge, you know, good for you for taking this on, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, so I usually just say, do you mind if we talk about your vision, or can I talk to you about your vision?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's okay to ask, but don't feel bad if you're told no. That's all.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just like with petting a really cute guide dog.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there's a real killer. There's one here that's so cute. Oh, you just want to
Yeah.
touch her. It's torture.
Yeah,
Um,
they are all very cute. I know I've seen ones that have like a big stop sign post on the side. It's like, stop, don't touch.
yeah.
Because so many people are just rude. One of my colleagues, her child is blind. She's an adult now, but one of her very first guide dog she was a greeter at a Walmart, and this was like 20 plus years ago. And she didn't know it, but one of her coworkers told her, did you know that there's a customer that comes in every day and feeds your dog? He was feeding the guide dog a burger every day. Now, what if that dog had an allergy to people food, or, you know, anything could happen, and she had no idea. It just, yeah, not good.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
And just one little, Elizabeth she wanted to say thank you. That was helpful. We could communicate both in person and on Facebook, and we would share pictures on our phones, but I never knew in person what I could or couldn't reference. So thank you to you both.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes.
All right. And then before we close up, we do have the next Lunch and Learn series scheduled. It will be on Thursday, September the 21st, again, from 12 to 1 or 12 to 1:30 or 1:07, wherever we're at right now. It's a great conversation, but it is going to be job search and placement tips for job seekers on the autism spectrum. And that will be presented by Krista Mullis from Milestones Autism Resources. So if you can scan the code on your computer with your phone right there, you can register. Like I said, you will be getting this presentation by the end of the day. You will have all of that information, and then also in all of the communication that comes from Constant Contact through the Employment Collaborative of Cuyahoga County. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please feel free to email one of us or to email Jared Daly. That email is jdaly, D-A-L-Y, at cuyahogadd.org. I have to remember that all the time. But definitely reach out. If you are not receiving those emails, please reach out to us. It has a lot of helpful information, has all of our job leads. We do want to keep you all on the up and up because we are utilizing Constant Contact to the best of our ability. Thank you all for jumping on. This was a great conversation. Thank you again to Alicia and Wendy. I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and a nice and safe weekend.
Thank
You
you.
Thank you.